cover how to create a Repl.it and have it connected to GitHub so that you have a backed up version control system of your software. So to begin with, we actually start in GitHub. We do not start in Repl.it because you need to create your GitHub repository first so that you have a place for your code to be. So we're just at github.com and we're going to go sign in and use the credentials that you had last time when you created your GitHub account and log in. Next thing we're going to do is create a new GitHub repository, and we're going to use the naming convention that we use in this course. So it's the course code, then the unit, spell it correctly, then the language. And if you have more than one or a particular program that you're making, you would then put the title of the program. In this case, we don't actually have a title, so we're just going to leave it blank because it's just a test. But if you were doing something like the, spell it correctly, you're doing something like the Hello World program, you would name it like that. So we're just going to leave it blank because we're not actually going to type it in code in our example today. We're going to leave this button here selected. We're always going to make our repositories public. We're always going to click this button to add a README file because we're going to need that. If you are programming in a particular language, not HTML, but Python or something, you would add a git ignore. If you want to, you could choose a license, and a reminder that we are always using main as our default branch now. And then you just click create repository. So it's going to go off and it's going to create our repository, and we're all set to go. Before we go to Repl.it, we should always add a GitHub action to use the GitHub Superlinter to make sure that our code is properly formatted. So we're going to do that now. We're going to go up to actions, and we're going to set up a workflow by ourselves. We're going to leave this file name main.yaml as is. This code we are going to replace. So if we go to the course website, and we go over to the references section, you have this description on how you set up GitHub Superlinter. So we are in this file right now, and this is the code we need to put in. So we're just going to copy this section of code, and we're going to go back here, and we're just going to replace all of it with that code. Once we've done that, over on the right-hand side, we can click the Start Commit, and it's going to put a comment called created main.yaml for us, which is correct. So we're going to hit commit, and it's now added this file. The next thing we need to do is add in the GitHub Actions badge down here on the README file so that we know if our code actually is properly formatted. So we're going to go to the README file, select it, and then we're going to go to the pencil over on the side so that we can edit it. We're going to add another line. We're going to go back to our references section, and it's this second highlighted piece of code that we need. So we're going to grab that, and we're going to go back, and we're going to paste it in. You will notice that there is this section where it says owner and repository, and it's inside Angular brackets. So you need to replace this line of code. It actually exists twice. It's over here as well. You have to replace it with your GitHub owner name and this particular repository name. So it's this right here. That's what you have to put in. The easiest way I find to grab it is if you just go up to the URL and you can just copy and then paste it in. So I'm just going to copy that, select here, paste it in. Remember, you have to do it in 2 spots. And then when you're all done, scroll down to the bottom and you select commit changes. So that's going to change that README file. We're going to go back to the root, Here is our badge. It says no status because the GitHub actions are still running to check our code. So if you go to actions, you can see that it's still running. So we're going to go back to the main. Once it's finished running the GitHub actions, hopefully this will update to green and we'll know that our code is properly formatted. We're going to go up to the URL once again, and we're going to grab the entire URL. We're going to need that when we go to Repl.it. So now that we have everything set up at the GitHub end, now we're going to go to Repl.it. So you open a new tab, you type in Repl.it. You select the login button. And once again, we don't use the Gmail one, the Google account. We're always going to use our GitHub account because then our Repl.it will automatically be connected to our GitHub account. So we're going to select GitHub. It will log us in. Over on the left-hand side under Home, My Repls, this is where all of your code will reside. If you've taken programming before, you might have several different course codes, so select your particular course code. Once again, under each course code, you should have a file structure that matches the file structure for the course. So we're currently in Intro, and we're currently in Intro-03. And this is where we're going to place our code today. So we're going to select the new Repl.it button, but we're not going to choose a particular language. We're going to go over to import from GitHub because we want to connect this REPL to our code base that we created in GitHub. So we just select import from GitHub. Now, depending on how many GitHub repositories you have, this might update pretty quick or slowly, depending if you have a lot of them. So if it pops up and you see the Repl.it or the GitHub repository that you were trying to connect to, you could just select it. If it's taking a while to load, that's why we copied the URL where the cursor is up here. You can just paste in the URL and it will bring up exactly that GitHub repository. Either way, once you find the GitHub repository you're interested in, you just select it and then click the import from GitHub button. So Repl.it down here in the console, you'll see it's going to clone our repository from GitHub. It's going to bring in all that code, in this case, the README file and the GitHub actions. So you can see that over on the left-hand side. It also added this .repl.it file, which we're going to need eventually. The next step is to go into the middle section, and you'll notice that Repl.it had a hard time trying to figure out what programming language we're trying to program in, because it's just an empty GitHub repository. It has no clue. So if we go under select languages, it just picked Bash, which is the first letter, and it might give you several choices. We, in this case, are going to pick HTML, but whatever language you happen to be programming in for this repository, you just select it. So at the moment, we're going to pick HTML, and then we're going to hit done. So depending on whatever language you pick, Repl.it is going to upgrade this Repl.it to be programmed in that particular type of language. Since this is HTML, it created a web page for us, and here it is, nice and blank, because we have written no code whatsoever at the moment. And you'll notice it's updated the language to HTML for us. What we would do next is always back up our code to GitHub before we actually start typing anything. So to do that, you go over to the left-hand side where it says version control, and you select that, and Repl.it will connect into GitHub. So we're on our main branch. Here is the name of our GitHub repository that we connected to, so that's good. In here, what did you change? So you always have to have a commit statement so people know what it is you have been doing. And in this case, we have connected to Repl.it. And then you just hit this commit and push button. So it's going to commit our code, and then it's going to push it back to GitHub. When this is done, we can go, there we go. So it's now push this code back to GitHub. So we can go back to GitHub and see our code. Now, it's not here because we need to refresh the page. So if you go up and refresh the page, there is our new Repl.it code. Unfortunately, the GitHub action still hasn't finished. We can go up to actions here, and it's madly still trying to do our latest one. But whenever it finishes, if we do get a green check mark, then we will have a green status light here, and our code will be good to go. And that's how you actually create the connection between a new Repl.it and your GitHub repository.